Hello. I was going to say good morning, but I realized that I'm the only person where it's morning. My name is Andy Fischtrom. I am a consultant at Fortuna Admissions, and with me today to my right, I guess, is Emma Bond. She is one of the best coaches on the planet. And we are here with Gmat Club today to have a discussion with some candidates about their aspirations to get their MBA. And at the end, we're going to be taking some additional questions, and maybe I'll get Emma to spill a few of her secrets. So I would like to greet our three guinea pigs today. And before we get started, let me send it over to Emma, who's going to introduce herself. And then Emma, you can get started with the first victim.
Brilliant. Thanks, Andy. So my name's Emma Bond. If you can't tell by the twang, I originate from what we call Down Under, so New Zealand. Moved to Japan after university and then to the UK, and that was where I really started my sort of MBA admissions track. I worked at London Business School for about 8 years with the team there on the full-time MBA program. From there, I then worked at the Boston Consulting Group doing recruiting from the MBA into BCG's global offices for a couple of years. And then from about 2012, I think, which seems quite a long time ago now, I joined Fortuna and have had such a great time working as a consultant there for the last few years, and just getting to meet great clients with great stories. And yeah, so it's been a really exciting run so far, and I'm delighted today that we have 3 people who have joined us, so we can go over their profiles. So to start us off, let's look at Upasna. Hi, Upasna. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Just to kick us off, I wonder if you could just take us through, I guess, some of the highlights in your profile and I guess your motivations for looking to do an MBA program.
Right. So basically, this would be my second MBA. And I would be giving my Gmat by August end, and I am targeting a score of somewhere between 680 to 720. Mm-hmm. And I have a work ex of 5 years, and I started my work ex with Deloitte as an audit assistant, and I kind of shifted from Deloitte from audit to valuation because I wanted to move towards valuation. And then it's been 3 years in valuation now, where I've worked as an analyst and a senior analyst in both private equity and investment banking. And for post MBA goal, I would like to either target a VC space, or else I would like to go for management consulting, as I understand that VC is a little difficult to crack. So I would like to understand how it works out, like what would be the best way to go about it.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Right.
So I think with your profile, one of the places that I wanted to look at first was this idea of a second MBA, because I know that we get a lot of clients and a lot of people coming to us and asking, what are my chances of getting into a program if I want to do a second MBA, if I've already done one. What schools will take me if I want to do a second MBA? Can I do an MBA? So I thought we might start there with you. And the first question I sort of had for you was, did you have any work experience when you did your first MBA?
No, I did not.
You didn't? Okay. So did you go straight from your undergraduate degree?
Yes, I did, from Bachelor in Commerce to MBA in Finance.
All right. And so I guess, obviously, you've got some good, strong work experience behind you, and I would like to congratulate you on making the shift from audit into PE, because that's a tricky thing to do, and that is actually a lot of people look to an MBA to achieve. So really, that's quite something to have done without, the MBA, sort of the international MBA. But I guess it would be helpful if you could sort of explain to us why you're looking to do an MBA now, when it's sort of, you have already completed one as such back in India.
Right. So basically, I am kind of lacking into your international exposure. That is one main criteria. And second, as you understand that VC even in India is very difficult to crack. It's very difficult. It's a niche market. You do not get in so easily. So I believe an MBA would definitely help me, as there are a lot of clubs where I can pick up the defined skills and the kind of update myself. So that's the reason I actually was looking for another MBA to basically update my skills.
Okay. And that makes perfect sense in terms of keeping yourself, up to date, in those areas. I guess the next thing I wanted to sort of zero in on with you was your choice of schools, because I actually had to check with some of them as to this general policy around doing a second MBA. Have you actually explored that, or are these just kind of schools that you had sort of felt might be offer the curriculum that you wanted or the experience that you wanted?
So I haven't seen the schools from a second MBA perspective, but I did see them from the kind of program that they are running, the kind of scholarship that they provide, and what kind of companies come to recruit in the campus. So that's the reason why I selected the schools, because they kind of align with the goal that I am currently having. So I did not see it from a second MBA perspective yet.
Okay, so let's jump in there then. So in terms of doing a second MBA, one of the things that I will say up front is that it can make it more difficult for you to get into a program, into an international program. And as I said at the beginning, we do see a lot of candidates who want to do that, who have done an MBA, often an MBA in India, but they hasn't given them the international sort of network that they want. A lot of people have done it like you did, straight out of undergrad without any work experience, so it hasn't allowed them to kind of implement any of their sort of prior work experience in the classroom. So they feel like they haven't really, I guess, been able to immerse themselves in that full MBA experience. So I know on your list of schools you had quite a bunch, so it was an interesting run of schools. So quite a few in Europe, so INSEAD, Oxford, Said, so Cambridge Judge, and then you had some in the US, so UCLA, Berkeley House, and UNC, Keenan Flagler. So when I went back and had a look, so I was pretty sure on this, but I wanted to just check. So I had a look this afternoon, and I think one of the things that you are going to have to think about is that the US schools in particular are less keen on accepting candidates who already have done an MBA previously. So UCLA say quite clearly that they don't like taking candidates who've done an MBA, and it's the same with Berkeley House.
Okay.
So I would encourage you, when you are doing your sort of final school choice, and I would encourage you to narrow it down a bit more for reasons that we can look at in a minute. But I do think you would have to be very careful and do your due diligence in terms of perhaps even having a conversation with the admissions office up front to say, are you really going to give me a fair shot? Because some of the schools do say on their websites quite clearly that they won't sort of consider candidates. In Europe, things are a lot more helpful for you. So the schools that you are looking at over here are generally happy to consider people who've done an MBA previously. But I would encourage you, when you are there doing your application and thinking about your story, that you are very clear on the reasons for doing a second one. So whether it's that, you didn't get out of the first one quite what you wanted, whether you didn't get that international network that you now need, whether or not you feel that you do need to upskill to make that switch into VC or your next career step. The thing that you really need to be very clear about is why you're doing a second one. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes, it absolutely does. Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And Emma, there's a couple of things when I look at the list of schools. The first one being, so INSEAD is where I spent 7 years as head of student life. And the big difference between INSEAD and the other schools is that it's a one-year program. And a one-year MBA is a very different creature than a traditional 2-year MBA program. It's a very intense experience. It's almost as many hours. I think it's 85 or 90% as many classroom hours as a 2-year MBA, but it's squished into with INSEAD, you start in January and graduate in December, or you start at the end of August and you graduate in July. So it's a fantastic experience. I don't want to scare you away from a 1-year or a compressed program, but it's a very different experience. Very stressful, very hard, but everyone says it's the best year of their lives, but you just have to know that going in. And the other thing, yeah, and I agree with Emma that your geographical choices are kind of all over the map. And one of the questions that you're going to be asked as you start down this journey is, why Oxford, why Cambridge, why NUS? And there's a number of good answers to that, but I find a lot of people are saying to me these days, well, I just wanted to apply to a school that I thought would let me in. And that's not a good answer to that question. So if geography is part of your choice, if you want to study in both Asia and Europe, then INSEAD would be a really good choice. So that's just another, sorry if Emma and I are dumping all this on you. So what's going through your head as we're both talking?
I would actually like to understand how my profile would fit into these kind of colleges, like what kind of Gmat score am I looking at, and even if I had the right kind of Gmat score, because geography-wise, I'm not restricted at all. I would definitely, I'm aiming everywhere, because it's all about the kind of platform that they provide and the kind of growth that they provide. So geography-wise, I'm not at all restricted, but I would like to know which kind of program can I aim for realistically with the Gmat range that I've given, from 680 to say 720. So that is what I am actually thinking.
Yeah. So that's a good point, and I think you mentioned something about taking that at the end of August. So you are leaving that quite kind of late if you're looking to hit those sort of early deadlines for round one. Have you done any practice tests yet? Or
Yes, I have done a practice test, and I'm currently at the range of 610 to 650, which I am trying to improve by the next 1 month. Yeah, that's the target.
Brilliant. So in terms of what's realistic, I mean, it is always difficult to put a kind of, you can't put a number or a sort of strict answer to that, because obviously the schools will look at your whole profile. And as I said, I think, you have quite a high value add to the classroom in terms of that switch that you've done away from audit. You've got some really interesting bits and pieces on your CV. Clearly a sort of strong research analytical skill set, the financial modelling background that you have. So there's a real value add to whichever school you go to in terms of what you can bring to the classroom. So I think that a lot of schools will sort of be interested in your background. In terms of the Gmat itself, obviously schools like INSEAD, you're looking at around about a sort of 710 average for the past couple of years. The Oxford schools, which actually they're also 1-year programs, so you would also have to kind of do that condensed kind of fitting everything in and hitting recruitment quite soon. They are slightly lower Gmat averages, but not much. So I think really realistically, if you were looking to be able to hit the 700, I think it would help your chances.
Okay.
But it's very difficult, I know, when you're sort of early in the process and you're doing the practice tests to see how that's going to come along. One thing I would say is that if you've got it booked for the end of August, I would strongly recommend that you actually book in a second test date, because a huge number of my clients do end up taking the test 2 times or even 3 times to achieve the score that they want. And even if you take it once and you kind of go in and do the best you can and say you hit a 680, but you know that you've got a bit more in the tank with a little bit more work, taking it again and being able to bump it up another 20 or 30 points can make a really big difference, just in terms of kind of reassuring the admissions committee that you're going to be able to cope with the level of coursework. So that's something to think about, because if you do that test in August, it's going to get quite concertinaed close to those early deadlines.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, in terms of these, sorry, Andy, go. Yeah.
Go ahead. I have 2 more quick points. So you said you're not restricted in geography where you apply, but one thing to think about is you might be interested in working in a particular region after you graduate. And that's something that the career services team is going to hit you with like the day you walk in the door. They're going to say, okay, well, we have if for INSEAD, we have a campus in France. And if you want to work in Europe, it's probably better to finish your program there so you can apply there, interview there. And the other thing I was going to tell you, and I'll let Emma make some final comments before we move on to our next person, is you have something going for you that you can't control, but you're lucky because you happen to be a woman. And schools are really trying to bump up their percentage of female candidates these days, female applications and student body. So you can be happy about that. You know, this is the way I like to describe an application is it's like a jigsaw puzzle and all the pieces are scattered on the table in front of you. And there's certain pieces that you can do something about, and that's what coaches are good for. And there's certain pieces you can't do anything about, like your gender and your GPA and your undergrad and things like that. So you've got, you know, the right XY chromosome that you happen to be a female, and a school will maybe give your application a little more, what am I trying to say? A little more flexibility because they want to admit more women. Emma, do you concur?
I think I do. I think I'll push back a little bit on that and say where I would lie on that in terms of my old admissions role would be if you have two candidates of equal merit, like, you know, fully equal merit, the female candidate might get the nudge. I think certainly it doesn't do your application any harm to be applying from that position. But I was interested, Upasana, just quickly, sort of before we move on, in what your kind of research has been into recruiting into VC. And I know you're also interested in management consulting. I know that you're probably aware that you've picked two of the most competitive recruiting tracks to come out of MBA programs. So have you kind of done your own research into how those firms recruit and the kind of skills that you have already in your background? Because as I said, you know, you have those data research skills, but you have some sort of interesting experience, and it would be good to know a little bit more about your sort of extracurriculars, because from your CV, I was just having a look at that, there's not a lot of detail there. You mentioned that you'd managed various college events, you have a professional degree in singing, which is brilliant. But, you know, when you put yourself in front of the admissions committee, when you complete your application, one of the things that they're going to want to look at is your leadership, you know, whether you've kind of managed any teams, whether you're managing a budget, and, you know, have you done any mentoring or management in your current role at work?
I wouldn't say it's a very major management skill. It's a very basic, but I do work with NGOs and I do try to, you know, like kind of justify my application through that. I do teach financial literacy in NGOs.
Okay.
So that is how it is. But when it comes to office, since I actually have just 3 years of relevant experience, I haven't gotten into a lot of managerial role yet.
Okay. All right.
Right.
So yeah, so I think certainly that that extracurricular side of things will be really important in terms of fleshing out your profile and really showing the admissions committee what it is that you're going to bring to a class and that you're going to be able to make that transition. But I think just going back very quickly to what Andy said about the kind of the 1 year program that he mentioned, you know, in terms of INSEAD, you are going to need to hit the ground running. If you choose to do a 1 year program, you're going to have to come in and you're going to be hit with all those courses, and recruiting starts very, very early on. So that's something to just think about, you know, and then perhaps if you're still weighing up between a 1 year and a 2 year program, if you can find a good 2 year program that will consider you with that prior MBA, it might be something that you want to consider as just that slightly longer program to give yourself a little bit more time.
Right. Agreed.
One final question, Emma, real quick. Speaking of a 1 year program, so because Upasana is interested in finance, would it be better for somebody in her situation to start in January so she can have the internship, or is that not a consideration?
I think it would be useful if you're looking at a 1 year program. So if you're looking at INSEAD, and Andy, you probably know this better than me, but I know sometimes some of my clients have found it a little bit easier in the January intake than they have in the September intake. And then you would get the bonus of that internship in the middle of the year. Obviously, if you do a 2 year program, it's not such an issue because you would have that opportunity anyway. And certainly, you know, we haven't talked about sort of the 2-year program so much, but quite often now the programs are flexible enough that you can do sort of 2-3 internships and have that experience under your belt. So yeah, I think that might be something that you want to consider if you do look at a school that's got a double intake like INSEAD.
Okay,
Right.
Upasana, last question before we have to move on. Any final words or comments or things you'd like
No,
to
this
say?
was really insightful, and thank you so much for the help.
You're welcome. It's lovely to meet you. Thank you for giving up your time to join us.
Yeah.
Good luck. And
thank you.
I know this is kind of a challenging mountain you're about to climb, but keep the faith, keep your confidence up. And a lot of people start to think, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm never going to make it, but absolutely you can do it. Okay, one little side story as we transition into our next slide is since I started working with Fortuna about 6 months ago, I've been in touch with a lot of my INSEAD alumni friends, and I've said, oh, I've started working with Caroline, who is a former head of admissions at INSEAD, and I'm so surprised at how many alumni at INSEAD are telling me, oh yeah, I used a coach, and I really had no idea when I was there, but the theme I keep hearing is that a coach can tell your story better than you can tell your own story, at least as far as framing it for the admissions committee, because they speak the language, they know the buzzwords and the secret handshakes. I don't know if they have a secret handshake, but anyway, so that's been a big eye-opener since I started with Fortuna, is how many of my alumni friends used a coach to get in. I mean, it's so competitive, so it would make sense.
Yeah, I think it's also that people are sometimes not as confident about selling themselves as someone else. So if I work with a client,
Absolutely.
I'm saying, wow, you are so great. You have all this fantastic stuff on your CV. And I can be more objective about how to position your story. It's your story, but it's about how you tell it and how you explain it and how you see it through. So yeah, I don't know about a secret handshake, Andy, but certainly in terms of
maybe, but you wouldn't tell me if there was. So
no, I wouldn't. Then it wouldn't be secret anymore.
Okay. All right. I think we're ready to move on to candidate number 2. If we can put the slide up. Let me shuffle my resumes around.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the resume here. So if we can, brilliant. Right.
There we are. Okay, so, Emma, I'll send it over to you.
Okay, so our second candidate today is Paula. So hi, Paula. Could you just run us through, I guess, the same way that Upasana did in terms of the highlights of your career and why you've ended up here and why you're looking at doing an MBA program?
Sure. I'm a business major. I studied in one of the top universities here in Chile.
Yep.
I started from there working in management consulting for 2 years and then switched to retail, which is the industry that I love. And so I'm facing the idea of getting an MBA, but I'm having a lot of concerns because of my background and because where I want to go. In terms of that, I don't have the mainstream work experience or mainstream interest I don't want to do consulting anymore. I don't want to go to finance or venture capital. I do like retail, and I'm aiming for higher positions of management leadership. I do think working with people, it's what I want to do, and if it's in this industry, it'd be better.
Okay, great. So I guess the first thing that I would say is the fact that you are not from a traditional track right now is a bonus for you. Okay, so we see a lot of clients come in from consulting and from finance and from those sort of, I guess, the usual paths. Some of them are sponsored by their companies. And when you are sitting in an admissions office and looking at trying to bring in your class, one of the things that you want to do is bring in as broad a spectrum of candidates as you possibly can. So people who have worked in all sorts of different functional areas and different sectors. So for me, the fact that you have worked in retail and you have that sort of great supermarket experience behind you, you have worked in a cross-disciplinary role, so you've interacted with lots of different functional areas within your industry, is a real plus point. So that was one of the first things that actually jumped out for me with your profile. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about actually is your career goals, because when I went through your profile prior to this event, I did feel that perhaps you needed to do a period of really sort of a deep dive and a bit of self-reflection about where you see yourself post-MBA and then where you see yourself 10 years down the line, because those are the really key things that before you make any start on your MBA journey, and that also is sort of in terms of which schools you're going to apply to, you really need to kind of nut that out and make sure that it's completely clear in your own head. So, you know, if I said to you, post-MBA, regardless of which school you go to, what's your sort of ideal role? Do you have any idea of what that looks like yet?
I'll aim for strategy or more improvement of the place where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
For example, innovation or development of new businesses. I would definitely like to work internationally. I feel like to go outside, you have to have an international degree, like an MBA. So
Mm-hmm.
that would be the main reason. Not necessarily forever internationally, but for a while or a couple of years.
Okay. So I guess in terms of what you offer a class, so at the moment, I think retail, obviously, it's taken a real hit the last couple of years. But the only way is up. That's the way I see it in terms of the sector. So I think kind of doing some exploration for you in terms of where you sort of see yourself, looking at some different types of roles, looking at some different sort of perhaps bigger employers that are going to offer you perhaps a post-MBA sort of rotational recruitment, where you can perhaps explore some different areas of the business, may work quite well for you. But I do think, you know, as you sort of look at the schools that you're applying to and the schools that you select, and I noticed you've got 2 European and 2 US schools, so that's something I think we need to talk about. But I think, you know, Andy, I'm sure you probably agree that that's really the next step in terms of making sure that she's very clear where, I guess, the post-MBA dream goal is heading.
I can't agree with Emma more, Paula, on the point, and this is something that seems to come up in every person I speak with, is that you need to keep the end, you know, that's one of the secret habits of highly successful people, is begin with the end in mind. And so many people need guidance on where should I go to school and what should I do. And honestly, I tell them to go do some, you know, lay in bed or do a little bit of meditating on how do you see your life when you have that MBA framed on your wall. Where would you like to be living? Where would you like to be working? And that is crucial. And the other thing is, so many people dismiss their chances because their background is unconventional, non-traditional. If you would look at my CV, which I hope you never do, I have the most non-traditional background in the world. And at INSEAD, I met doctors and scientists and oceanographers. And so don't think for a minute that because you don't have a traditional, you know, sort of finance or consulting background that the schools won't want you. In fact, I think that makes you more attractive, is that you can bring something new to the table, and you're going to be working on these cases with people from different countries all around the world. And I can tell you that in the MBA office, when they used to put these study groups together, they would look for diversity in backgrounds. And you don't want 5 consultants in the same group. You want the consultant and the doctor and the opera singer and the scientist. I mean, so the more the better. That's what I would say about that.
Yeah, definitely. I think if I was interested in the schools that you mentioned, Paula, primarily because actually I think it would do you a really good idea, a lot of good to just look at the Gsb Main Essay, which is that really traditional famous essay, what matters most to you and why. And I think, you know, in advance of any kind of school application, just taking that essay topic and spending some time thinking about that can often point you in the right direction in terms of career goals. So if you really sort of do that sort of deep dive into where you want to have impact in the world, you mentioned, you like working with people, so clearly that's something that's important to you. Take a look back at, I guess, the roles that you've done. I mean, you mentioned you're a product manager now, but what is it that you've really enjoyed about those roles? Clearly you moved away from management consulting, so that's perhaps, as you say, not a track that you want to go back into. But that whole idea of what matters to you, what are your motivations, where do you want to have impact? And if you can sort of start answering some of those questions, it will give you a guide in terms of where you might end up post-MBA. So the 4 schools that you've got down, you've got MIT, IE, ESA, and Stanford. What's the rationale behind those, other than perhaps Spanish?
And why not Berkeley, since you were already there?
Yeah.
I want to. I like Berkeley a lot. I do like the fact that it has a huge reputation, but maybe it's something superficial. But I want to live somewhere else. I'm aiming for maybe big cities, and more than just like Berkeley. That is more a student town, maybe. Okay. And then I'm aiming for big reputation schools. I'm interested in both America and Europe, the Occidental side. But like you said, I do have more meditation to do in terms of where exactly I want to go, because I'm open to even more universities. If you say this will help you to get to this place and this one to the other, I do have to figure out first which place I want to go.
Yeah. If you're looking to move into retail and consumer goods, to be honest, there are a number of schools, and the percentages from all schools that go into that area are quite low. So I think a lot of it for you is likely to be about, as Andy was mentioning earlier on, where do you want to work when you graduate? Are you looking, would you prefer to be in Europe? Would you prefer to be in the US? And then also to look at what kind of business school experience do you want? You mentioned big city, so that's quite a specific thing, and that will, remove quite a few schools from your sort of pool. But I think certainly, think about things like the length of the program. So you've got IE, which is, I think, 11 months from memory, and then you've got right through to the full 2-year programs in the US. So although a lot of them can be fast tracked now, so you can complete earlier, you also need to think about things like that. And do you want to be really immersed for the whole 2-year experience? Do you want to get in, get the skills, and get out the other end? So all of those kind of things are quite important at this early stage. But yeah, I think the other question I wanted to ask you was about Gmat. So you've put yet to take. Have you got a date in the diary for that one?
I already took it. It was in the period between I applied for this interview and then today. Okay. I got a 650. I do think I can get a 700. So I'm going to retake it as soon as possible. And that's maybe 2 weeks or 3 maybe. Okay. I don't know if I should aim for even more because of the caliber of the schools I'm targeting.
Try it again.
Yeah. I mean, certainly if you're looking at schools like Stanford, Gsb, and MIT, they do have very high. They're up around 730, I think, the average, maybe even higher at the moment. But it's not all about Gmat. So when I looked at your CV, I'm just pulled it out here. You had some really, really interesting extracurricular things that you did during your degree. So you mentioned the volunteer work, helping low-income families build houses, and that shows real strong community engagement, which is just something that a lot of schools are looking for, that sort of that leadership, that wanting to get involved. Entrepreneurship leader of the Students' Council of Business. So there's some really, really interesting things on your CV, which will enable you, when you pull your application together, to showcase a hugely diverse skill set. And that's a really positive thing. So yes, by all means, do it again if you've got a 650, which, by the by, is a good, solid first score. So congratulations on that, because it's a horrible test. Everyone's pretty much aligned on that. But yeah, if you can get it up to 700, and then you can pull out all these other facets of your profile, then there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to get into excuse me, one of these schools.
Yeah, in that note, I was worried because my GPA, it's around 3.3.
Okay.
It's not that high compared to other people in my country, because I don't know if it's a good or a bad decision, but I took the hardest teachers, the hardest classes. So my GPA, of course, got affected. I could have had higher, but didn't. And also, in terms of recommendations, I do not know anyone from like a huge profile to said like, have this very important person backing me up through recommendations. So I think I'm only my experience, extracurriculars, and Gmat, most of my score.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I do think that with some polishing, a lot of the information that you have, sort of the bare bones on your CV, would make you a very interesting candidate for most schools. So that's certainly something. That was my sort of initial feeling when I read your profile. One question: do you belong to any? I know you mentioned that you're very involved in kind of women's empowerment and things like that. Have you investigated, institutions like the Forte Foundation or anything like that?
No.
Okay, so I would strongly recommend that as a professional woman that you just explore any kind of professional memberships like that, and partly because a lot of the business schools have collaborations with Forte, but also because you'll develop a huge network of professional women. So it's a really good starting point in terms of, just starting those discussions with people and building those networks even before you join the MBA program. So yeah, I mean, Andy, did you have any additional thoughts?
Yeah, I do. So Paula, I was making some notes on your CV. One of them that I think maybe you can expand on is, so international experience is something that all schools are going to want to know about. I think maybe your resume could use a bit of work in that area. Is there anything that I might have missed as far as, and it doesn't necessarily mean living or working in another country, but maybe dealing with teams comprised of people from other countries. So, and the fact that we're identifying this now is a good thing because you have time to work on it.
You're asking me if I had any other international experience?
Yeah, I mean, I see that you studied in Berkeley, but in your work, were you working with people in other nations?
No, mostly it's all Chilean people working for Chilean stores.
Okay.
There are people international, but I won't say it's anything remarkable.
So that might be an area that you can work on. Another very important phrase that, at least at INSEAD, was very important is social impact. So I do see some of that. Let me look at the other. Yeah, that's an important thing. And then the final tip I have, and this is not just true for you, but for anyone, is to really study the individual programs, the individual curriculums. And if you can come to a school or to an interview knowing the more you know about the program, the better. People at INSEAD used to say, oh, I want to take your first 100 days. That was their sort of key final course that people took. Or I want to study with Neil Bearden, that kind of thing. So if you can find some alumni or through LinkedIn or something, somebody who's gone to a school you're interested in, maybe ping them and say, hey, I'm going to apply to Stanford and can we have a chat or something like that? So Emma, I'm kind of rambling. Maybe you can make my comments sound a little better.
No, absolutely. And I just want to pick up on something that's splashed up along the bottom here, is that with the letters of recommendations, the next point I was going to move on to was that really it's not about picking the big names in your company or your CEO or anyone like that. It's about selecting recommenders who really know you well and can comment on your sort of day-to-day performance, often supervisors. So I know that can sometimes be tricky if you haven't told people that you are planning to leave and go to grad school. So we often have interesting conversations with our clients about how to work around that. But recommenders are something that you need to think about really, really early on in the process. So that's kind of putting some thought into who you want to choose and how you're going to prep them and explaining to them what's required for a business school recommendation. That can be really valuable to put some time into that early on. There's one other thing I wanted to just ask you from my point of view, and this is purely personal interest. What is biohacking? I saw that on your
I had the same question.
And I don't know what biohacking is. So what is it?
So you know how nutritional decisions affect your health?
Yeah.
And most of the modern diseases are based on poor nutritional choices, but also you can improve with I don't know, maybe you take more sunlight and then you process better what you're doing good. So it's helping even more to not just eat good, but supplement yourself to perform better, even if it's in sports, maybe it's in your office. So your performance is enhanced from the decisions on nutrition and supplements.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, because I did not know. So I'm going to explore some more about that. Paola, before we move on, I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that really I wanted to say to you. I guess my last comment would be really do think about where you want to have your MBA experience. It's a great part of your life and something that you will, you should be able to immerse yourself in fully, and you should enjoy the experience. You should enjoy the location. So if you are looking at a school in Spain, so Madrid or Barcelona or wherever, or you're looking to head to the US, do really do your kind of due diligence about the size of the school. Like Andy said, network, do your outreach. And that's something that goes for everybody that's looking at schools. Reach out, do the webinars. You can't visit campus so easily at the moment, but there's so much online stuff available. Really find out as much as you can and really talk to the alumni, talk to the students, talk to the admissions team, and get a feel for that sort of elusive, what we call the fit of the school. Because I think often with my clients, when they really find a school that fits them, that really suits them, they know, and then that's their dream school and that's the goal, and then the other schools are backups, which is always a sensible thing to do. But once you find the school that's right for you, I think you'll probably know.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that.
Okay.
Did you have any
right.
questions for us?
I think we addressed most of them. I will be maybe in terms of financial aid. I'm also have to stand out against others because from all South American countries, I would say our income levels are way lower than the competition outside. And so if there's anything that you would recommend to highlight in order to improve my chances in getting financial aid.
Apply early is definitely the first one. Get your applications in early, because some of the big money is awarded early on to top candidates. That's probably my best nugget of information for that. But just really, it's about writing those great essays that showcase who you are, making yourself invaluable to the admissions committee so that they really see the great person that you are and all this great stuff that's on your CV, and as we were saying earlier on, that's part of what consultants do, is to help you really showcase all of that, but pulling all of that package together and saying, look at me, I really am fantastic and I am deserving of financial aid. It's competitive business, that as well as I do, but apply early, and then also you have a look around in Chile and see what is available, and also that may vary depending on the countries that you're targeting. So it's worth sort of factoring that in early on in your school choice as well.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you both a lot.
Thank you, Paola. And Emma, I have a quick question and a point before we transition to our next candidate. Emma, the question for you is, and I had somebody ask me this, is do these schools publish the scholarships that they have, the financial aid opportunities, in advance of being admitted, or do they not tell the candidates that until they've been accepted?
It depends on the school. So LBS, my old school, if you go onto their website, they have a fantastic, shiny new website, a couple of years old, and they have a really big scholarship section, and you can search by program. So they have quite a broad portfolio of programs. You can search by program, you can search by scholarships that are available by nationality, because LBS is obviously such an international program like INSEAD. Scholarships that are available by sector, by gender, by everything. So so some schools do advertise what's available, and some also have just kind of endowment fund money, which is shelled out with offers to top candidates early on. But the size of the money pot depends enormously on schools. So you'll be as aware as I am that the US schools usually have a lot more money to funnel out to people than some of the European schools. But it's definitely worth getting the application in early and doing the scout around the website, or having a chat to admissions staff who will have a lot of information on that.
I remember INSEAD had so many scholarships and opportunities, and you're right. It was, maybe people from Africa can apply for this. People from, if you're a woman, you can apply for this. So there's so many opportunities out there. Okay, and then the final point I wanted to make before we move on to our next victim is, Emma touched on this briefly, and this is so important for everyone who watches this. The recommenders you choose for your application are so critical. When I started my training at Fortuna, I was shadowing a coach, and I was listening to a conversation with a person applying, I think it was to LBS, and their recommenders were identical. They were basically had the same role in the same company, and just this person had worked for both of them. And the coach I was listening to said, no, you got to pick one or the other and find some diversity in your recommenders, because if they're just carbon copies of each other, then that's not going to be as helpful if you have two completely people who have experienced you in different stages of your career, who have seen you at your best maybe in different functions. So Emma, if you want to say anything else about that, but recommenders I think are really important. Yeah,
they really are. And I think often people don't realize that a bad recommendation can completely torpedo your application, because it's really only external verification that you have when you're initially reading a file of what this person is like. So a recommender that is, we work with our clients to put together a recommended brief so that we take the hard work out of it, if you like, because recommenders are always busy. They never realize how much work is involved. But a carefully crafted recommendation which really understands your skill set and can speak to that and provide concrete examples is worth its weight in gold. It really is. Whereas one that's rushed, one that is less detailed, just doesn't add anything. And it is, as we're saying, it's a competitive business. So yeah, and don't forget, people shouldn't forget that they can use clients as well as, if they have good clients who are happy to do that for them, that's sometimes a different angle that's quite interesting as well.
All right, we are moving on to candidate number 3. Emma, take it away.
So Akshay, hi, thank you for waiting, because I know you're our last one today. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey towards the MBA.
Yeah, thank you. The wait was worth it, and it was great to listen to you before as well. I completed my chemical engineering almost 3 years ago, and it's been 3 years since I've been working in this company as a sales and business development manager for Far East Asian countries. So that includes the likes of Japan, Vietnam, and stuff. I have loved chemistry and chemicals since my childhood, and I've always wanted to be in that field. But in my first job itself, I thought I would be in R&D, but then I was dropped because the recruiter saw something in me and he said, you know what, you're going to be in a front-end role. And I realized that was a good decision, because my skill set and my, all these things were more suited for a role like that. And throughout my work experience, here and there I've come to what are my lackings and how an MBA would help me do that. Very recently, I also had an opportunity to work with a very well-known, management consultancy firm. Very closely with them, and it showed me that my skill sets are a very good fit, a tailored fit to work in such a field, and I want this MBA to become a part of that world.
Okay.
It would be the bridge from where I am and where I aspire to go.
Okay, fantastic. So you have got, let me just get this right. So 3-4 years experience so
Yes.
far? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So one of the things I really liked about your profile was this kind of global experience, which is snuck in there because for
Me
someone
too, Emma. That jumped right out at me. Holy moly!
Yeah, so for someone who's quite early in their career, and I know I assume that you are working out of India. It doesn't actually say on here, does it, on your CV? But
Yes. Yes.
yeah, you're working out of India.
I work out of India. I travel for work. So the last I traveled was Vietnam, and I was supposed to travel to Japan, but then God had different plans.
Brilliant. So for the schools that you are looking at, which are mainly European schools, that focus on sort of global markets and that travel that you do and the countries that you work with and the different cultures that you engage with as part of your day-to-day role is invaluable. It really is, because it enables you to demonstrate with concrete examples how you interact in a multicultural setting, that you've worked with different kind of cultures, that you will understand if you go to Japan, where I used to live, the hierarchy that's involved in working in those kind of cultures. And that is really just such an enormous value add and a really strong point in your profile. So I think that's the first point that I wanted to make. I would say that your CV needs a little bit of work because I struggled a little bit with your what you've got here is that you've got 2018 to present a business management role, and 2019 to present digitalization and analytics lead. So are you doing those concurrently, those two positions?
Yes, those are going simultaneously. So the business saw an opportunity in me, taking care of the analytical part as well, and I try to work into those things as well.
Okay, great. But you've obviously been promoted from a trainee role, so that's also good. You were kept on by the company, so we can see progression. Considering that again that you're quite early in your career, so that's great. In terms of your career goals, the other thing I like is that you have a clear, this point that you made right off the bat about having a passion for something. That you love chemicals even since you were a kid is fantastic because that kind of comes through. Your career path looks planned to me. It looks like you are taking steps to move in a sort of linear direction, if you like. I guess my next question for you. So management consulting, how tough that is to get into. Are you looking at kind of to work for an MBB firm in their practice in a sort of chemicals practice area, or are you looking to go and work for a niche kind of consulting firm?
I'm sorry, I did not understand your last question. The voice was breaking a little.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I was just asking whether you're sort of looking for an MBB type track or a sort of a Big Four track, but to work in a sort of specific practice area, or you're looking for a sort of niche sort of chemicals consulting firm.
I think an experience with an MBB firm would, of course, be more global and more. It would give me give me more exposure. So that would definitely be something I'll look at.
Okay.
I also look at European schools. My focus is on European schools. I'm not looking at schools in the US or something because I want to get settled in the Europe in the longer term. And I don't know the philosophy and of these schools is something that attracts me. They look like a place that I want to be.
Yeah, well, I think the sort of group of schools that you have, there's quite a lot again, so I would encourage you to narrow that down a little bit by doing your outreach, all the things we've talked about with the other candidates. But I feel with you that you kind of know where you want to go, you know what you want to do. You have done your Gmat, so you have a 720. I guess I would say that you probably need to be aware that if you are looking to move into an MBB firm, it's just outrageously competitive. I'm sure you know that. Yeah, I mean, I used to work at BCG and it's super competitive. The other thing is that if you go into a sort of generalist management consulting firm, start with, you will probably work in a generalist role, so you won't have the opportunity to specialize until a bit later. So that's something you probably, I don't know whether that would appeal to you. Perhaps that's something that you would like to do is get that kind of rotational experience.
Sure.
Yeah. Andy, did you have any comments on the schools? Because there's a nice mix of European schools there.
Yes.
I do. I have. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. But yeah, HGC is something that I really want to get in, and I've been working towards it. I've been trying to learn the language of the land, and getting to know the culture more, the people, trying to connect with alumni or the current students. So HGC and IESC, I would say France and Spain are something that I'm looking at. Country choosing Spain was a little is a little dicey because of the visa regulations,
Yeah.
for students. So I have to keep that in mind as well. Since I have to work there.
Yeah.
That would be a question from me for you. How important it is to be cognizant of the visa situation and how difficult it is for to graduate from one country and then get a job in some other country in the EU.
Andy, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So I'll start with that first. I remember when I was at INSEAD, the career services team was constantly updating the guidelines for each country and each company. So companies will come to interview you, or you might interview by Zoom, and each company has its own little nuanced. If you want to work in the United Arab Emirates or in the United States, or every country has its own specific policies, and the career services team at these schools will be very up to speed on what those are. And not only for employers, but also if you want to study in a different country, that it's the same thing. INSEAD in Singapore was having trouble getting some visas from certain countries, from people from certain countries. But I love your choice of schools. I really liked your CV. I wanted to ask you, I was a little unclear, if you don't mind me asking, what is your age right now?
I'm 24. I'll turn 25 this year.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. With all your experience, for some reason, I thought you would be older than that, but that's a nice young age to be.
Yeah.
And then on the, I really liked your CV, but there was a sentence I wanted to ask Emma about. Emma, at the bottom of the page, of the front page, loves cooking, traveling, exploring history, art and culture, swimming, and, wait for it, planning imaginary speeches and travel itineraries. Can you speak about sentences like that for a moment? Because it's not the first time I've seen kind of a hippy-dippy sentence like that, and I want to hear your thoughts.
It is a hippy-dippy sentence. So let's start with the good things about that bullet point. The good thing is that it shows me that you have lots of interests, and it shows me that you're an interesting person who is very well-rounded, and it comes as a bottom bullet of a whole bunch of other stuff that Andy and I can see that other people listening won't know about, which is, your Model United Nations involvement, et cetera, et cetera. So you have some really cool stuff on there. I think for me, if I was reading this, I as an admissions committee person, and I saw planning imaginary speeches, and while I'm sure that actually goes into your public speaking, other stuff that you've got in there, I would probably encourage you to just formalize that slightly, because it did make me go, oh. So whilst we want to see, because what it indicates to me is creativity and inspiration and all those really good things, but we don't want it to say I'm a hippy-dippy, So I think there are ways of positioning the skills that you have, because that is actually a skill very clearly, but there are ways of saying, so that was an interesting pull out, Andy.
That's
I'll
good.
definitely work that.
Go ahead, please.
No, I'll definitely work on that. Thank you.
And the other comment I wanted to make, the international exposure, I think, is really great. As Emma said, you cannot understate the importance of EQ, emotional understanding, soft skills, cross-cultural experience. So that's the kind of thing that if you walk in the door with those skills from day one, you'll be a very successful MBA student. And INSEAD's claim to fame was that they had, in every intake, they had students from 80 different countries. And everyone is a minority. That was the phrase there. There is no majority there. So that will be very important. Yes. But no, I really liked your CV, and your profile, I think, is very strong. so you can go to bed with a smile on your face and plan your graduation speech.
Yeah. So I just have a couple of quick points. One is well done on quantifying things on your CV. So the fact that you put here about 87.5% growth in revenue, great. So that's more of that kind of thing. What have you done? What's the impact that you've had on the bottom line? So that's really good. In terms of, you asked a question before about visas, there's absolutely no substitute for talking to current students and finding out what the situation is. It's incredibly fluid at the moment, especially in Europe. Those UK schools you're looking at, you'll be aware with Brexit, everything changes like the wind. So that's something else to remember. And I guess my last point is just around management consulting and how competitive it is that just be careful of going down the MBB route, because it is so common. And with your really interesting background in sort of chemical products, that it might be that if you go along the lines of identifying some other companies, some specialist companies that you want to recruit into, it might seem more achievable in terms of admissions and in terms of careers. So that's just sort of one final thing to think about.
Okay. Akshay, any final questions for Emma or myself?
No questions as such. I'll definitely look into the points. It was really great. INSEAD, I would say, is a dream school, and I've read amazing things about it and about the people in it. I don't know if I'm underestimating myself. I'm just wary of whether I could get in a school like that, or I'll be able to grapple with the 10-month program, since this is the first time I'll be getting a management degree. This is not my second MBA, or I've not had a really long experience. So I was worried about that as well, whether a short program would be something I could cope up with.
I think that's very smart. I've actually visited HEC in France quite a few years ago now, but it's a fantastic campus. You are not in Paris, but it's one jump on the train and you're there. So I think it's a great school, very entrepreneurial, if that's of interest, in any way, shape, or form. But that said, don't close the door on INSEAD. Do your research, do your outreach, see how you feel about it, because sometimes these school choices evolve as you find out more about them. And we encourage people to. You get one shot. The worst thing that can happen is you apply to your dream school and you don't get in. But I do think if you are looking to really upskill in the business kind of skill set area, maybe a slightly longer program will be more effective for you.
I'm going to tell one quick story about that 2 year versus 1 year, and then we're going to wrap this up. INSEAD had still has a partnership with Wharton, and INSEAD sent students to Wharton, and Wharton would send students to us. So I went to visit Wharton in Philadelphia, and I was there on a Friday, and I was being given the tour, and there was nobody there. It was a ghost town. I said, "Where are all the students?" They said, "Oh yeah, we don't have classes on Fridays. People do club activities, or they go up to Manhattan and go meet with finance people or whatever." And I was totally thunderstruck, because at INSEAD, boy, do they have classes on Fridays and Saturdays and evenings. And, you're trying to do 2 years of work in a year. And so clubs, it was the number one priority, of course, is academics, and it has to be academics. Second on the totem pole was career services. And way down here, student life was my baby. And we used to have very heated meetings about, well, I need this date, I need this evening. And no, you can't have it, because Shell is coming to interview, or McKinsey is coming to interview. So if you can imagine a 2 year experience squeezed into 1 year, that's your INSEAD experience.
Right.
Right. So I think we got some questions.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I'm sorry, Emma. I just wanted to thank both of you for taking out the time.
You're absolutely welcome. It's been brilliant. I think we're going to sneak a few minutes to answer some questions, which I think are going to come up for us on the screen quite soon. Here we go.
There we go.
Can you comment on round 1 and round 2 strategy? Currently thinking 3 reach schools and 1 tag round 1, then 1 reach, 2 tags and 2 safety round 2. Not asking about round 1 and round 2. Okay, so that makes sense, Justin. Nice to meet you virtually. So it can be a real push to get all your schools done for round 1. So generally what we recommend is splitting. So say you were going for 4 schools, maybe your first school in round 1 and your second school in round 2, and then your third school in round 1 and your fourth school in round 2, so that you're splitting the focus across the different rounds. But certainly, you know, earlier is better. It also depends, you know, it depends what school you're looking at. If you're looking at Columbia, you want to get in for those early decision applications. So yeah, I don't see any problem with splitting across 2 rounds. The only thing I would say is that if you want to do that, you're going to need to prepare yourself to be working on this process for several months, and it can be quite full on if you're trying to balance it with work. So it's either a really intense period of craziness across the summer and into those sort of early September deadlines, or it's kind of slightly crazy all the way through until January, February. So kind of up to you, and you do need to have a look at your timetable and your work schedule. We are crazy all the time, so yeah.
And Emma, before we move on to the next question, can you just briefly touch on the dreaded round 3? And because I get asked this all the time, so can you just speak briefly on what round 3 means?
Okay, so again, it depends on the school that you're applying to. So here in Europe, it is much more common for people to still be applying to schools in round 3, round 4, and even round 5. So HEC and the Oxbridge schools, they go quite late. LBS has round 4, which literally decisions for that came out last, 2 days ago. So on Wednesday, I think it was, Tuesday, Wednesday. What are we, Thursday? Yeah, I'm losing my days. So it's much more common in Europe to have those rounds that go later. But I still recommend, if you can, round 1 or round 2, because it's just, you know, it's when the schools are starting to firm up the base of their class. And if you can get in earlier and you're a good candidate, it's just easier. Plus, you also have more time, right? So if you're looking at starting in September and you've got to travel internationally, as all of you would have to do, that's quite a lot of logistical involvement. There's a lot of visa issues involved, and giving yourself more time is just less stress. So that's kind of personal opinion. In the US, yeah, go for those early deadlines every time. I'm pretty sure my US colleagues will back me up on that.
Okay, let's see, there's another question. Go ahead, Emma.
Okay, so how much does country representation take part on admission? Also, I'm Mexican, but my ethnic base is China, which is quite also overrepresented. Okay, so there are not officially quotas from different regions. Again, this varies from school to school, but you know, all admissions professionals and admissions committees are looking to make their class as diverse as possible. So they will be looking to recruit across different nationalities, across different sectors, across different functions, so that when you get put into a study group, when you come into the program, you are learning as much of your peers as you are of faculty members. So if you know that you are coming from an industry or a nationality that is perhaps overrepresented, or if there is a very big pool of candidates, especially for your target schools, then that is when I say, please do get your application in early. You will give yourself the best shot of getting a place. If you are from those overrepresented pools and you're applying late in the year, then it makes it that much more tough for yourself. So that's just probably all I can really say about that. So there's not quotas as such, but they do try and split it out so that there's as much variety as possible.
I think we've got time for one more question. Oh, maybe that's the end of our questions. All right, then I want to finish up, Emma, with just a quick question for you. This is Ask the Coach, and I'm really interested to hear your response to this final question, which is, if you could if you were in a drone and you just went way up high and had a bird's eye view of the people who are starting on this journey, can you give 1 or 2 pieces of wisdom to sort of share with people as they start down this path?
Oh gosh, I've got lots of pieces of wisdom, but I'll make it quick. I think the first one is probably, I can't overemphasize enough the importance of self-reflection, and I did touch on it earlier, but the more time, and we always talk about this with our clients, you know, and I have big conversations with my clients about this, the more time you can spend early on working out, you know, really thinking about what's important to you, what do your career goals look like, you know, straight after you finish and then further down the track. Do you want to be sort of working on sustainability? Is climate change important to you? Do you just, are you happy to go into finance and that kind of thing is less important to you? Do you want job stability? Are you an entrepreneur? Do you want to help people who are entrepreneurs? So you're going down the venture capital route. Think about what excites you, what you're passionate about, and if you spend time on that early on, it will make your journey that much easier and more fun, because you are working towards goals that you have then set for yourself. And then, when hopefully you achieve them, there's that much more sense of the kind of purpose and meaning awarded to them. So yeah, I think that's probably my top tip. And then the second is, whichever school you go for, so do your research, do your outreach, speak to students, speak to alum. And then when you do your applications, if you are working with a coach, great, but make sure that the passion that you have for your school comes through in your application. Understand your school, understand the fit, and know why you are a great candidate for that particular school. That's my other.
Absolutely. That's such wise advice. And, in my brief time in this universe, you'd be amazed at how many people I get on the Zoom call to look at their profiles, and they say, Andy, to be honest with you, I just want to know what school would let me in. And I tell them that's not the question you should be asking, because if you're interviewing at INSEAD or Berkeley or wherever, and they say, why do you want to go here? You need to have specific reasons why you want to go there. And so doing your homework, doing your due diligence and researching these programs is really critical. And my final little tip is, and this is not based on anything scientific, but I speak to a lot of people who are so down on their profiles and so down on themselves. And I wish I could give everyone a shot of confidence and just say, believe in yourself, because that comes through in your profile, in your CV, in your essays. So, it's a safe thing to talk to a coach, because a coach can buck you up and tell your story in a really cohesive sort of a narrative. So have some confidence, research your schools, and know why you want to go to a school when you start down this path, and that will make your journey a lot easier, I think.
Yeah. So and I guess my final thing is to say thank you so much to the three of you for coming on here today with myself and Andy. I've loved speaking to you. And if anybody's interested in learning more about the process, feel free to reach out to us at Fortuna. We're always happy to speak to new candidates and help people on their way with this, what can be quite an amazing MBA journey.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, everyone. We're going to say goodbye, and I'm going to go talk to a person in 9 minutes who wants to apply to Harvard. So we'll see how that goes.
Thanks very much.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.